Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Retro Reminisce, the show where we look at older games, see if they hold up, what we like, what we don't like, and look at a bit of nostalgia that we may have or have not for these games we're looking at. My name is Killjoy, and today I'm joined by not only one, but two lovely gentlemen, as always. Mr. Mark Kitchen, how's it going, good sir?
Hello, I'm good.
Bit sweaty.
Well, yes, it's boiling.
Goddamn
Make
summer.
it stop.
And also joined today is the one, the only, Mr. Fruity.
Hello.
Also probably feeling the warmth.
Yeah.
It is.
I made smoothie.
He's very proud of his smoothie. Today we're looking at the one, the only marsupial, Mr. Crash Bandicoot, specifically the first game. This game was made by Naughty Dog, released for the PlayStation 1, or the PlayStation, the original, and was released during 1996, so it's a little bit on the old side now. But yeah, Crash Bandicoot is an action platformer game, pretty much a 3D platformer, but with kind of very much 2D elements in design. Like, this is not your Mario 64, this is not a Spyro type game. This is very much, yes, the game's 3D, but you're playing on very linear paths. There aren't many, like, you can't go off and explore and stuff. But yeah, people that know who Crash Bandicoot is, a lot of people had this game when the PlayStation originally came out. I feel like most people had this, and Rayman seemed to be the first sort of games that came out on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is the first in the series of quite a few games in the Crash Bandicoot series. And yeah, we've played it. We've got things to say about it. I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. So we'll chuck it over to... We'll start with you, Mr. Mark, because I don't know what your history is with this game. So tell me a bit about when you've played this and whatnot.
I never owned it. Like, one of my friends had it as a kid.
Yeah.
There's obviously a lot of memories for a lot of people, a lot of nostalgia. Very big series in the 90s. So yeah, I remember going around like my mate's house and playing it. The main levels I remember are like more like the ones where you're running at the screen or running away from the screen, as opposed to like the side scroller ones.
Yeah, the gimmick of the game.
The boulders and things,
like the main kind of levels like that with the boulders and like things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't played it a huge amount. I wouldn't be able to distinguish this between the other Crash Bandicoot games. I think I played Crash Team Racing a bit. That was good.
Crash Team Racing's good.
But yeah, I a lot of playing it again today, a lot of the levels I wouldn't have recognised. I didn't necessarily play them all. Probably didn't get that far.
This game's hard. This game's very hard.
So yeah, I've got a bit of nostalgia for it, but probably not as much as you two do, from how well you seem to know the levels and stuff. So.
Yeah, we'll get on to me in a minute. Let's check in Mr. Fruity. What's your sort of experience with this?
Yeah, so I had this game on PS1. I started with the second one, and then with the third one, then went back to this one. But yeah, I played it a lot. Probably not as much as I played the second one, because that was like my introduction to Crash Bandicoot in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the mainstays of PlayStation.
Yeah, I don't know many people that had a PlayStation and didn't have a Crash Bandicoot game.
I didn't.
That was really
one. Yeah.
Oh.
But then again, I didn't really buy. For some reason, I bought my PlayStation quite late because I just played N64 for ages. I didn't get a PlayStation until the late 90s.
Yeah.
And then I just didn't. I played like Tomb Raider and Tekken and Driver and stuff, but yeah, never bothered buying Rayman or Crash Bandicoot because I just played them around my friends all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Pretty much the same for me. My best mate basically got a PlayStation with Rayman and Crash Bandicoot, so we'd stay up till like early hours in the morning just like playing Crash and stuff. And this is not a kids game. Like, this is a kids game disguised as a brutally typical platformer.
Aesthetically as a kids game, but it's like not easy for children to pick up and play.
It's like the granddaddy of those like Super Meat Boys and stuff like that.
Yeah, this game is tough, but yeah, no, I played this near when a PlayStation came out, I think. So I must have been like 8 or 9.
Yeah,
around about then.
I guess age-wise, I would have been like 7, I think, when I got the PlayStation 1, 7 or 8. It's like 97.
Just while everyone was getting PlayStations, I got a SNES. So at that time. So that's what I was playing during that period. I was like, got a new console. But I played a lot of those early PlayStation 1 games at my mate's house, which was cool. this was just one of those things that just like everyone had a PlayStation that I knew just had this game. So yeah, it was fun. I didn't really play the second or third one until much later. But yeah, the first one I remember, like especially that first island, because the game split up into 3 islands. That first island I know pretty vividly, like roughly what the order of levels is and like the levels and
same. Like the first island I definitely knew a lot better.
So that's kind of what sticks in my memory when I think about this game. I'm like, oh yeah, like the fortress levels and the rolling stones and then the boulders and a lot of that sort of stuff, and the river levels when you're running up the rivers and things. Before later on, where the levels get very different. But let's move on to things we like about this game. I'm going to start with you again, Mr. Mark. What do you like about Mr. Crash Bandicoot? Not a lot.
Difficult question.
It's tough. I like the whole like you're saying, the whole gimmick of the whole thing, like concept of the game, is like the whole sort of platforming, like running away or running towards the screen and stuff. And
yes,
it's quite good when. I mean, it's difficult, but it's good when like you're running towards the screen and you can't really see where you're going until you get right, and it's like there's suddenly a drop or suddenly a platform and stuff like that. And
I know you weren't enjoying it that much, so
I don't know what else to say.
That's fine. We can come back to you if you want.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll chuck it to you, Mr. Fruity. So you probably got a few more things to say about this.
Yeah, I'm more positive. The art style's good.
Yeah, I like the art style.
Like, the colours work well. It's a very bright palette, but there's also like darker palettes.
Yes.
It's easy to know what is a platform and what isn't a platform. It's easy to know where like what the size of the levels are that you can't climb onto.
Yeah,
like the boxes stand out. Like it's a variety of levels where you have like the not just by the variety of mechanics, but also like a variety of like locations, stuff like the bridge.
Yeah.
And like the factory, then like the kind of like
different
medieval
themes.
castle, and then obviously the island, and then it kind of like tries to tell things with gameplay as well, like when you climb over the gate or in the levels to like get access to
sort of shows you on the map as well,
the
doesn't
first boss. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. And like when you go up the rivers and stuff, you're going up like the rivers on the world map and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. It kind of says story through gameplay, because unlike the other games, you don't have like the dialogue between levels and between worlds and stuff, which you have in the later games to try and make it a story. So that's kind of cool. I still quite like the music for this game, but I don't know if that's just nostalgia. But especially like the first islands and stuff, it's got some very like atmospheric, like the didgeridoos and stuff. It's kind of cool.
Tribal is probably the best way to describe a lot of the music in this.
But like not specific to like any part of like just Australasia, isn't it? I guess it's a setting. Like the apples being like a different, like a Wumpa fruits. It's not a thing. It's like a magical thing. I like how it kind of continues this thing where like Crash has absolutely no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
In this game, like it's not as obvious in this game. I do like how you just like wash up to the beach and he's like, "I'm doing a thing now." It's like it's a real like reason behind it. Like the collectibles, they all do stuff.
Games,
like all the collectibles do stuff, and like there's not like a lot of pointless collectibles. Variety of enemies as well. There's a lot.
Yes,
of
there are a lot of enemies in this game as well. Like I know that some of them fill a similar role, but like there's a lot of different designs.
Yeah,
which is always what you want to see.
And like all like the bosses and stuff are themed for the part of the world as well. Yeah, which is a part of the world doesn't get a lot of love. Yeah, I think that's everything. Yeah, I can go over some things here. Nice little list in front of me. So level themes, like we just spoke about, the fact that there's usually 2 of every level in this game. So if there's a level where you're running upstream, there's usually a harder version. The 2 bridges. Yeah, 2 bridges, the 2 fortress levels, 2 hog levels. Even like the darkness levels as well with the mask. Yeah, 2 of those, stuff like that. So the level themes themselves are pretty varied. Whether you're like we spoke about, you might be running towards the screen with a boulder following you. You might be running away from the screen, and left and right as well. So this game really mixes up how you play. You're never really locked into one style for too long, which is good. So it's really refreshing actually that it does. Level to level it feels very different. It's true. Something that is really, and this is more noticeable now having played the remake of the original of Crash, is this game is quite forgiving when it comes to sliding off things compared to the remake. So like there are times where you can overshoot. If there's like a hole in the ground, you've actually got a slightly bigger hitbox than you think you have.
so you can kind of like almost run off the edge and jump. It's not like to the point where it's like Donkey Kong where you can actually like roll off the edge, fall down a hole and then jump out of it. But there are times where like I felt like I should have died and I had the ability to jump still. So whereas in the remake they kind of got rid of that. Like if you make a mistake, it's pretty much game over. But in this you can. There's that forgivingness of just how Crash is designed. His hitbox kind of allows, probably by accident rather than by actual design, but it does allow you to make certain jumps a little bit more
probably
easy.
by limitations of like the polygons and stuff. It's hard to make it go all the way around his body. So I think in the remake it's kind of tied to some frame, I think.
Yeah. So it's obviously much harder. Something I personally like. I think the controls in this game are really tight. There are times when there are certain things in the environment that make it a little harder when you're trying to like do subtle movements. But generally, because a lot of times you can just tap a direction. Yeah. Especially if you're jumping, you don't need to hold it down. If you tap, you can then like course correct. Yeah. The majority of the time, if I died, it was my fault. There are some exceptions to that, but we'll get onto later. But like generally, the way that Crash feels in this game, it feels fairly weighted. It's not hard to learn how he jumps his arc, and he feels fairly responsive. Like you push a direction, he's going to run in it, and he doesn't. There's no like acceleration. He pretty much just goes from 0 to max speed, which I like. I like the way it feels in that. Lastly, I like the way the mask is implemented in this game because, like a lot of platformers before this and even now, a lot of platformers do it where Mario, Sonic, you get hit, you die. Whereas those games implement their own systems of like, oh, you've got a mushroom or you've got rings. This, if you haven't got a mask, you die instantly. If you've got one mask, you get an extra hit. If you've got two masks, you got 2 extra hits. Then you collect the third one and you become invincible for a period of time. And I kind of like the fact that when you collect 2 masks and get a third one, when the third one runs out, you've still got 2 masks. So if you're good enough and have learnt the levels enough, you can constantly keep picking up invincibility, which I think is really cool. Yeah, and also when you die on the bosses, you start with 2 masks. Yeah. And like randomly you'll start with a mask if you keep dying as well. Yeah, if you die too much, you will get given them. So I think like that sort of system is actually pretty well done. Like, because some of the levels are pretty stingy with their masks later on, so you kind of have to like, if you've got them, trying to hold on to them is like really crucial. If not, you are going to be very much just trying to learn every little aspect of every level before really tackling it, and you will die a lot in this game. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much the things I like about it. Generally, what things don't we like? I'm gonna give it to you, Mr. Mark, because I saw you enjoying this game. Saw the look of hopelessness in his eyes. I'm gonna give you the platform, so take it away.
There just wasn't any memorable music for me.
Yeah.
I don't remember any of it. There was nothing that stood out. In our last episode, I felt like when we did Super Mario Land, the music, just because so joyful, that's what would make me persevere, even if I found the controls a bit difficult. Like if I died, I wouldn't care. Like the music just carried me through the levels, whereas this, I just don't remember any of the music. None of it really stood out. Yeah. And it just makes me get frustrated easier when there's not good music in the background.
I feel you. That feels.
So yeah, that was disappointing. I know you said that you thought the controls were really good, but I had a problem with them.
I know.
There's points where I was just pressing X and it didn't jump. Yeah. Points where it just looked like I'd intentionally run off the edge, whereas I hadn't. I'd tried not to do that, but the game didn't like that.
No, it's like
running and jumping and just hoping that I would land. I wouldn't be able to calculate the platforming. I would just hope that I would land on the platform, because I don't know whether the game is going to register my jump or not, or whether it's going to register that I've landed on this thing, or and it just kind of made it a bit frustrating for me.
Yeah, no.
And took out the kind of any kind of skillful platform element that I could have had. Yeah. Really, because I just felt it was a bit.
Did you do many of the side-scrolling levels?
I don't think I did any of those.
You did one of the fortress levels, didn't you? I think you did one of them.
Maybe.
Yeah. So
maybe I would have found them a bit easier doing 2D platforming. I think also because of the age, like the graphics, like a bit jagged, so you can't you don't like what you think you can land on, you can't, or vice versa. Yeah. Whereas I know Rayman, for example, was a very clean-looking game.
Yeah, that's the difference between 3D and hand-drawn.
Yeah. So it's a lot easier to.
Yeah.
See.
Yeah. See, this hand looks a lot better than some early 3D platformers.
No, I
with,
would
like,
agree with that.
polygons.
You weren't clicking with it, were you?
No.
I could tell.
So it was like it was good nostalgia, but I just was like that kind of compelled to persevere with it.
Yeah,
really.
sure.
I just didn't. I was like, oh, yeah. Parts of it I found fun, but like
Yeah.
every other parts where I was just like, I wasn't trying as hard as I could.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, definitely.
I
You've seen me
got
you've seen me play other platformers, and I've been better at those because I probably was enjoying it more.
Yeah.
So. But
It's
yeah.
it's worth saying this game is brutally hard. Like there is weird ass difficulty spikes from
Yeah.
level to level. Like even the first world, after the first 2 levels, it just goes boosh and just like straight up.
Yeah.
And then the very last level on that island is brutally difficult.
Yeah.
And then 3 levels later, another brutally difficult level. Like there's no rhyme or reason to why some of these
This
levels
game
are hard.
has no chill after the first like 3 levels.
I felt like some of the camera angles were a bit difficult. They
Yeah.
just don't allow you to see what's going on if you're going towards the screen or away from the screen.
Yeah.
You need to be able to see the depth and like what you're going towards or coming towards. And some of the camera angles didn't lend themselves to that
No.
kind of gameplay. So yeah, I found that difficult.
That's
I'll
alright.
just leave it there.
Yeah, okay. Well, if we got to think of anything else, we'll come back to it. And then,
Yeah.
Mr. Fruity, anything you didn't like about this?
Yeah, the difficulty spike is weird.
It's very
Like,
strange.
some of the bosses are like, they seem to be either in like the wrong order or like
Fucking Ripper.
just varying like difficulty.
Yeah.
And like all the platforming and like on like Koala's boss fight, like the lava, you can so easily die in that.
Mm.
It's just some weird choices where like I can see why they always wanted to make it 3D.
Yeah.
They don't even have like the 2D levels like you do in like the second and third one. They're like, no, everything's got to be 3D, but it doesn't mean you have like a weird like foot forward and backwards to walk along. The amount of
Yeah.
times you miss platforms or like mess up timings because you're slightly too far forward or backwards to the
Yeah.
screen, that's kind of weird. I guess it's because they wanted to be able to say this is all 3D, so
Yeah.
I guess I can see why they did that. It's a bit odd. Yeah, so some of like the bosses are a bit weird. Like the hitboxes are just kind of bizarre, especially
Fucking
like
all over the
that
place.
hog run.
Yeah,
Oh my
wonky
God,
hitboxes is another big one.
Trying to go through all that.
Bloody
Like, it
plants.
works all right on the normal-ish levels,
Yeah.
but when you got like the boulder or you're like riding the animal, it's the hitboxes are really noticeable, just like how wonky they are.
Yeah. Very wonky.
Yeah, like what I was saying when we were playing this, like it feels more like a tech demo for like the other 2 games than like an actual like fully finished game. Like you can tell they were still like working on. But then it was a weird time for 3D games anyway back then, so it makes sense why there was like some teething problems.
Again, like when I was sat back watching you guys play, like I was really taking in a lot of the things that were going on there. Those plants that bite you, their hitboxes are so weird, and it must be the way that they move back and then shoot forward and stuff. But there are some times when you think you're out of range and get hit by them. Sometimes you spin and jump over them, and then like you land in front of them. And it's like, yeah, it's really hard to judge sometimes with those enemies specifically. Like they're really quite frustrating to get past. But yeah, there are some weird ass hitboxes in this game.
Yeah, it's just really odd. Like some of the platforms when you're jumping and climbing upwards, it's like there's not quite enough space for the character. Like if they made the platforms a little bit further apart, it'd be so much easier. And because it's so early in the game, it's like I doubt that was by design. If anything, some of the machine levels are easier than like the actual earlier levels.
Yeah.
Like, it's a weird
Just slow it down a bit.
difficulty
Yeah.
curve. It's kind of unfair to this game since it was the first one, but like a lot of Crash's personality isn't in this game. Like Cortex doesn't have like his personality. Like Crash doesn't have like, he's got like way less animations and stuff. Like his death animations, there's a lot less of those.
Yeah.
There's like he doesn't like he looks at the screen and stuff and does like the eyebrows when he's about to jump on like the hog.
Yeah.
Like that's like really like characteristic. It shows like character. But then like at the beginning of it as well, like a lot of the time, like he just doesn't really have any like personality. Whereas in the later games, he has so much more like personality in how he moves,
Yeah.
like the sound effects he makes and stuff. Like it's a bit more, cartoony. Which
A bit more fleshed out.
Yeah, which is a bit unfair because it's obviously the first game. Obviously they're going to improve on it in the later ones, but I really did miss that when I was like, oh yeah, it's just a bit flatter in this.
His idle animation is to look left and look right, whereas I don't know when he does the dance.
It's the second one. I don't think he does the dance in this.
Okay, yeah, because he does the dance with the whole like shuffle and things.
Yeah, and like throws up the apple, wampa fruit and stuff.
Yeah.
And
like he might do more animations, we just didn't stand around long enough, so I can't remember, to be honest. But
yeah, I gave it a little while, but yeah, all I got was like the look side to side one. Yeah, and like when he does like the little dance when you win later on in the series, where he does like the dance and stuff when he completes a boss or a stage, whereas in this he kind of just like levitates in the air.
he goes, yeehaw!
Which is kind of weird, especially on the bosses where there's not like a launch pad, a warp pad or anything.
Yeah,
He just like ascends, and it's really weird.
yeah, it is odd.
A lot of the time, it's like a lot of the problems with this game is just like PS1 platformers,
Yeah,
especially like 3D platformers at like the beginning of the PlayStation's cycle.
yeah, for sure. I'm gonna have to agree with Mark. First off, the music in this game, for me, the overworld map is really, really good. The first level is really good. Heavy Machinery's got good music, and Hog Wild has good music, and the rest of the music is very atmospheric and very bland. And unfortunately, you don't really want that in a platformer. Like
I can see what they were trying to do.
I said, you've got a lot of that
Bit
tribal
like-
stuff going on, but like,
They kind of make it feel like you're in like the jungle-y kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like trying to be like minimalistic.
Yeah, it's very
I can
sort of
see what-
backgroundy music, isn't it?
It's
really?
kind of like Ocarina with like the Lost Woods or something.
yeah,
Not Lost Woods. The village I'm thinking of, that piece of music was a bit more like
chilled out.
chilled out, but like it doesn't really work on a platformer.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is when it's you've
Well,
got
actually, I guess the
action.
Cow Ranch and Ocarina is probably a better example.
Yeah, when you've got a game that's an action platformer, you kind of want you kind of want the music to fit the levels. And I'm not saying the music doesn't fit the levels, but it doesn't fit the action.
Yeah, it doesn't suit the genre of the game, but it does suit like the location and
Yeah.
like the feel of the game. It doesn't suit the genre.
I think I've just, over the of all the platformers I've played over the years, like a lot of the ones I think about, I think, oh yeah, that's got good music, or like I can associate. And like I said, I like some of the music from this game. I don't think it's all terrible. Like the dun 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 dun. Dun. It's like classic. Like to me, that's like, awesome. That's a really good bit of music.
Yeah, the arrangements are really interesting as well.
Yeah, it's weird hearing it all in MIDI because obviously in the remake it's all redone. But
Yeah,
um,
it's like the music's good. It just doesn't fit the genre.
yeah, I think something that's worth picking up on. Now, I said I really like the controls in this game, and I stand by that. But one thing that is very fiddly is the way the air movement works. So there are levels very early on where you've got to bounce up on these metal blocks with the up arrows, and you bounce. You have to bounce on multiple of them. The air movement in this game is just super fiddly. It's really hard to do subtle movements. Like you usually push a button, you're going to move quite far, and the amount of times where like certain platforms bob, so when you jump on them they sort of bounce down and then knock you up, and that can
Yeah.
really throw off your jump. So when it comes to like actually trying to move in the air, like it's there, but it feels extremely clunky. Like I think it's not so much a problem with how the game plays and feels, it's so much the puzzles or the elements that they put in the levels that aren't really suited to this game. Like as soon as you've got like a good example of this is like Road to Nowhere or the other bridge level, High Road, where those levels require you to do some super precision platforming on some very thin bits of planks of wood. And I think the game really fails there because it's not that kind of platformer. You never really feel like you have as much control as you want when doing that kind of jump, that kind of movement. Whereas
Hard to gauge the distance as well.
Yeah.
'Cause it's not a full jump, it's not like a half a jump.
it's sort of this weird
Or if you
middle
need
ground.
momentum after the jump as well.
Yeah, there are certain levels like when you get like a side-scrolling level, usually it looks clean. When you're not jumping from tiny platform to tiny platform, it's not so bad. But there are issues where I was like, you bounce. Sometimes you have too much momentum. Like you jump on a block thinking that you jump up, but then the block would then break and you'd jump forward a little bit. And the amount of times I do
Or
that, I
you
hit a checkpoint. and
collide with enemies and you bounce off them.
yeah, and you like fly down a hole and stuff like that. It's very strange and it takes some getting used to. But I think it's actually more so the design and placement of certain objects and certain puzzles in the levels than it is of actually how Crash handles. But you have to be aware that like he doesn't have as much. His movement in the air is very jagged, very stuttery rather than quite smooth. which is it just can be an issue sometimes when you're trying to land certain jumps or trying to hit certain objects and not fly down a pit. So that's something I picked up on. We spoke about the difficulty spikes, but I mean this game spikes up fast, and then like every other level is like super difficult, but you know, don't need to go into that really again. We spoke about hitboxes on some of the enemies. Something that I found, or a couple of things I found specifically weird, were in the levels where you've got the rolling stones. So not the boulder levels, but the ones where you're like running toward away from the screen. You've got the sort of big wheels go rolling back and forth.
Yeah.
The hitboxes on them, like you can kind of fly through the top of them. Like there were many times where like I thought I was going to get killed for them when I was watching you, Mark, and I thought you were going to get killed by them and you didn't, which was strange. But also something that I noticed was the Tnt Explosions. It's really hard to gauge
how wide they are.
How wide the explosion is.
Yeah.
But then when you were doing Koala Kong, it seemed like the explosions weren't quite as big. And I get that because you're in a smaller area and stuff. But like,
I managed to cheese my way around it on one of the boss fights, and I don't know how I did it. Really, it was just seemed like I should have got hit, but I didn't. I don't know.
I got a feeling the hitbox like comes at like a delay.
Yeah.
Or like the size expands of the hitbox over time, maybe. Like it seems to like, if you go like instantly over it, you got time. Like I guess it like do it after the animation ends.
Yeah.
Then it like does the damage. Yeah.
It's very weird. But like it's not, to be fair, it's not that much of a problem. But because you guys were doing certain sections, I was like, oh, I can really notice this right now. And I was like, this doesn't. It's like it's breaking its own rules of like how TNT worked. So it's very obscure, like why sometimes you get hit and sometimes you do similar things and not get hit, and certain levels it felt like it was bigger and stuff. So just very strange. I wonder if that may depend between levels, but I'm not sure on that one. We spoke about this as well. Objects obscuring level design. This is the high road or whichever one it is, where you've got to try and these TNT boxes jump over it. You don't know if you're landing on something or whether you're going to jump down a hole. That happened to me on one of the levels as well, one of the temple levels. I died and I was like, I didn't know there was a hole there.
Yeah. How are you meant to know? You can't see.
I can't see it.
Yeah.
That to me, with the way that the camera is poor design. Like I don't mind them doing what they did, but like either space it out or make something a little bit more obvious, because as soon as you start obscuring, especially when you're running away from the camera and towards the back of the screen, as soon as you start obscuring stuff where it's a level full of holes or gaps or traps, you get into a problem where it almost could be considered cheap, and you never really want it to feel that way. And I'm not saying this game makes it feel cheap, but it definitely straddles the line where it's like, you know, it's a little bit awkward and can be a bit frustrating. Like I just died and I was like, oh, I didn't know.
Well, it requires you to like have played it before.
Yeah.
Like it's very hard to get through these levels first time.
And that brings me on to not the last point, but actually we'll do that a bit last. But like, yeah, camera can be very. It feels like the camera in this game needs to be levitated a few inches. Like, and a lot of the time where if it was just a bit higher up, and so you could see a bit further, sort of like a slightly different angle, it would make some of these levels a bit more easy to cope with, just because sometimes the camera's like quite low down and behind Crash, whereas if it was a bit higher up and you can see a bit better, you can kind of gauge the distance a bit better, especially on the temple level where you're running again away from the screen and you've got platforms moving up and down, and sometimes you just jump and you're like, I can't gauge the distance, it's too dark until you see my shadow hover over that platform. Like, distance in this is really hard to gauge, and the camera would help if it was just a bit higher up, I think. But my last point is that the game definitely feels, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but in this case the game feels too much like trial and error. And I understand that all games kind of have that because you've got to learn, but this game, like, it feels a lot of the time, if you haven't played a level before, like especially Hog Wild, because you've got to learn the pattern of like the natives moving back and forth. You've got to learn the patterns of the hogs on the spit roasts, and if you've not played that level, like, I get that it's meant to be challenging and things, but there are other levels as well, like End of Native Fortress. That entire last section, I'd be shocked if someone got through that first time.
Yeah,
you know,
that's also the thing, isn't it? It's like, it's got so many levels in this game anyway, like you don't really need to. But I guess I don't know how you do it with like the riding the animals one, so you'd have to like.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like
speed down, I guess.
It's not necessarily a bad thing to have levels feel like trial and error. It's just when you're constantly smashing your head against the wall when it becomes a bit of a problem, where you're like, okay, the camera's really messing me up here. Like, I want to be able to do this, or in that case, the hitboxes. There are just certain things where you just think
one spike I couldn't get around.
Yeah, and it's not every level, but there are a lot of levels. Like, I mean, Road to Nowhere and High Road again. Like, I know they're straight up difficult, but I feel like that level doesn't give you enough time to kind of get into the gimmick of it, because it's like after the first kind of like couple of jumps, it's like, okay, now here you go, here's the rest of the level, and you're like, oh, this is hard. I don't really know how you would change this, but it definitely has that aspect where it gets into a realm of where I start to get frustrated with platformers, where it's like, I want it to be a challenge, but I want it to feel fair, and sometimes with this I feel like I get thrown into such a deep challenge so fast on a level, and I'm like, whoa, you know, I've got the experience of playing this game before.
Ease me in.
Yeah, you know, it doesn't need to be brutal all the time. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, there are so many good ideas in this game, slightly ruined by the game not always giving you enough information beforehand. I was saying this with some of those jumping enemies in one of the temple levels, where you don't realise you can't spin them until you do that, which is fine, but you don't really see the jumping ones until like halfway through the level. So then they have a different colour and a different design to the ones you've been dealing with, so you're like, well, can I jump on these, can I not? And I just think sometimes
the spikes aren't as obvious that the sideways attack isn't going to work.
Yeah, I think sometimes
they do have spikes, but it's not as obvious as like the robot ones that have like gigantic spikes.
Yeah,
well, like the turtles and they have like the big spikes
around them and things.
Like, well, clearly I can't do that.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it just doesn't always necessarily indicate things as well as it could, but it's not. It's less with difficulty, and I think just more a case of with the placement of enemies, the placement of like, here's an easy version of this thing first, now here's the level, or here's the harder thing, because even though you get two versions of most levels in this game, it's still only two versions and they're both hard. It's not like you get like much of a warm-up on most of it, but yeah, I would say that it definitely, if you get frustrated with games and don't like that kind of trial and error, which kind of ruins it for me to a degree, it's definitely something to be aware of throughout. It is a bit frustrating. So, well, that's pretty much all my dislikes as well. So we'll finish up then about if we think this game holds up. We're going to start with you, Mr. Fruity. Do you think this game, as a game, holds up?
It's a hard one. It's like, for me, it still just feels like a tech demo. I think it's also because I played the second one and the third one before playing this one, like, back in the day.
Yeah.
So like, I always forget that, like, so many of the mechanics and stuff are in the second one.
Yeah.
Like Nitro, like the slam, like the dash, like...
Yeah, the high jump.
Yeah, and like the sister, and like, yeah, the double jump. And like, being able to, like, do the slam so you get a little bit higher up when you do like a jump. So if you break one of the boxes, you can still kind of reach it if you do like slam in the air.
Yeah, he sort of brings himself up a bit.
Yeah, and like the cutscenes in between when like Cortex is talking to you and stuff. Like, I forget that's not in this one.
Yeah.
So like, it's about as I remember it. But even as a kid, I preferred 2 and 3. So it kind of holds up because this is kind of what I knew it as.
Yeah.
So I remember playing this and being like, that's well hard. Like, I'm just gonna go back to playing like 2 and 3.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I don't think I got much past the first island in this when I used to play it. So like, yeah, it holds up to what I remember it being.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Would you recommend this to somebody?
Yeah, I think my recommendation is still just like play 2 and play 3. Like, it still just feels like a tech demo. Like, I wouldn't give this to someone first.
No.
Like, if someone's never played a Crash Bandicoot game, I would not give them this one first. It'd be like, play this. Like, I'd give them like 2 or 3 to be like, they'd be like, oh, like this is it. This is like the feel of it, and then be like, here's one you can test your skills.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's where I start.
It's like playing Mega Man 1 first.
Oh god.
It's like
yeah, similar thing.
Oh god. We're gonna talk about Mega Man 1.
I think I'd rather play this than Mega Man 1 though.
Yeah. That's where you start with Mega Man 2 and stuff. How do you feel about Mr. Mark? Do you think this game holds up?
It's difficult because I haven't played any of the sequels, or at least I don't remember them.
You should definitely do 2 for the challenge. I reckon you'd have a very different
I've got 2.
And I've not played the Insane Trilogy, so I don't know. I can't
that's the point,
see
yeah.
any,
Let's get the Insane Trilogy. That's my recommendation.
Yeah.
Let's get the Insane Trilogy, because, like, yeah, it's a much better way of playing it.
So I have no comparison, really. But
well, on this game that you've now played properly today, how do you feel about it?
I don't think I'll play it again.
No?
I guess I'll play 2 if we do it for the channel,
Yeah.
but I probably won't
I
play
think
it just
on
for
the Insane Trilogy, I only completed 2 and 3 as well. I think I actually completed this. In the
I thought we
Insane
completed
Trilogy.
1. Oh, I completed it on the Switch, didn't I?
We didn't get all the way to the end of 1.
Okay.
We gave up, and I was like, "Can we play 2 now?" I was
Yeah.
like, "I don't want to play this anymore."
I would say, to your point, Mark, I actually think you will enjoy 2 because it
Yeah.
isn't.
Yeah, 2 and 3
it
is so
hard,
much better games.
but it's the difficulty doesn't ramp up as ridiculous as this game. It's not like 2 levels in. You're
and
like,
you
oh,
have
fuck.
more like moves to like deal with stuff as well,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
doing like the slide jumps and stuff.
Yeah.
And like,
He feels more acrobatic, is a good way to describe it. Like he feels like he's actually like learned stuff on his.
there's
gear.
not as many like horrible jumps as well.
Yeah.
The second and
The
third.
camera's a lot better.
Some of the better enemies as well.
I will say this: this game definitely looks better than Mario 64. Mario 64 looks like
Yeah.
trash compared to this.
Wow.
I'm not joking. I think this game looks better.
Well, Crash's design just kind of works in polygons.
Yeah, he's very polygonal.
Like a lot of the enemies are just like turtles and like big robots and stuff. Like it all kind of works.
So yeah, I'm not sure if anyone would enjoy going back to this game, like if they hadn't played it before.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't really speak for the sequels, so I don't know. But
Yeah.
and maybe perhaps start with the Insane Trilogy. You said they made that a little bit easier.
No, they made it harder.
Oh,
First one's harder.
The first
the
one's
other
harder.
two
oh,
are
I thought
better.
you said earlier that.
No. They actually made it. They actually made the first one harder because you don't.
By modernising his hitbox and modernising his like jump and stuff, so it's more in line with the other games.
Yeah.
It makes this game a lot harder because the gaps are harder to get over and stuff.
It's a lot more precise. Is the way
Oh,
to describe
okay.
it.
I thought you said
but
earlier.
you can
that-
use an analog
No,
stick.
I meant that in this version, because his hitbox is bigger, in this version of the game, the one we played today, you can kind of get away with some jumps that you cannot get away with in the Insane Trilogy.
Okay.
That's the point as well. You can use an analog stick on the Insane Trilogy as well.
Yeah, which is weird because I played this game with a D-pad anyway. Even on Insane Trilogy, I played the game.
It's like going towards you, where you have to hold down on the D-pad, and it's
then
left and right. It's hard, but if you press just left or right, it kills all your momentum going downwards. So you
Yeah.
just get crushed by the
It's hard.
boulder.
Yeah.
Like I much prefer using analog stick on those levels.
So I'm more positive on
I'm
the game.
sure you're gonna be much more favourable to this. You got much more nostalgia.
I like both versions. I like the Insane Trilogy version and I like this version. Mainly because this is slightly easier. The one thing I forgot to bring up was the save system, and this is fucking weird. You have to do the bonus game to then save it, which is a really weird way of doing it. Whereas in Insane, it just saves it after every level. I would say, obviously the smart thing, you get Insane Trilogy, you get all 3 of the games, and you play this one last, because it is so much harder. But if I'm taking the PlayStation game at its face value, forgetting about the sequels and things at the moment, yeah, I think the game holds up. This is not a game. This is a game that looks like, it's very child friendly. But this isn't a game you'd give. I wouldn't give this to a 5-year-old. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they probably play it, but they're not going to get that far into it. I'm probably like, someone's probably got a 5-year-old there that plays it all the time and does it. But like, I'd rather give them like Crash 2 or like a Mario game or even a Sonic game. The first world in this has a lot of levels, but like, it just gets so hard.
Yeah.
So hard, so fast, and I'm like, that's really kind of the problem with it. Is it's a game that feels like it's like you know how like you have Super Mario Brothers and you have Lost Levels. Lost Levels was designed for people that wanted more of a challenge.
Yeah.
That's what this game feels like. It's like you play Crash 2, you play Crash 3. I'm not saying those games are easy because they're not like easy.
Yeah,
But
that's a good comparison.
yeah, this is the game you play after you've got some experience with it. Like if you can complete this game, and fair play if you can do it 100%, because that's even crazier. Then like, yeah, like there is fun to be had here if you like that challenge. Like, people always go on about like the Dark Souls or this, that, and that. Like, I'm not one who likes specifically difficult games, but this is one game that I think I've put enough time in over the years where I'm like, I know it's hard and I can, for the most part, do most of the levels. Even the levels that I've played over and over, like, can still kill me quite easily if you're not playing 100%. But yeah, the way I feel about it is if you go into this game having not played a Crash Bandicoot game before, then expect a challenge, and if you're not up for that challenge, you're not going to enjoy it. As a game and the way it's made, I do think it holds up, but it clearly has issues that they seem to have fixed in the later games. But I still prefer this. I prefer this one over 3, and I probably prefer it over 2 because I think the levels in this levels in this game. The levels in this game are more memorable.
What you on about? Like the castles and 2 with the knights and like
That's 3.
the wizards that call. Oh yeah,
That's
3.
free.
Yeah, the wizards that turn you into the frogs.
Yeah, the problem with 3 is like most of the levels on it just don't do anything for me. Like I don't think the level design is as
You
strong.
jump to shark on some of the vehicle ones.
Yeah, the vehicle levels are fucking awful. like 3.
I still think 2's the best as mine.
The problem with 3 is they do the medieval, and then they do very specific theming, and
Egyptian.
I don't like it. It's really boring compared to the 1 and 2. I think 1 and 2 just has better like places you visit.
But 2's my favourite.
Yeah, and I get why people like up 2. The problem I don't like with 2, and this is a very specific problem, is I prefer world maps to the warp zone, the warp rooms. Like, I've grown up playing Mario and stuff, so I love it when I can move around a world map, and this is like the tiniest fucking niggle. So I like that in the first one, where it's like I've got a big world map and I can just like go to the levels, whereas in this you have to get between worlds, you have to go up and down, and yeah, I think 2's a really good game. I just don't think, even though this game is brutal, I still think the levels in this, but when you think about Crash Bandicoot levels, you're gonna go slippery climb, you're gonna be like hog wild, you know.
I disagree on that as well. I don't think this game is as memorable.
Oh, fair enough. I think this.
To me, like, this feels like a tech demo. 2 feels like the game, and then 3 feels like all the ideas that they had, which they should have probably thrown out. It's like it kind of jumps the shark when it gets to 3.
1 as a game, yes, I think it holds up. Yes, I would recommend it to somebody, but this is definitely a game you play after you've played other Crash Bandicoot games. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that one. Yeah, I mean, I knew this was going to be slightly divisive when Mark started playing this game. Purely on the reactions we got out of him doing it, so I'm kind of glad that we've done this, because, you know, this is a quintessential PS1 game that a lot of people played, and, you know, I think a lot of people are going to have their favourites. I think a lot of people are going to prefer 2 and 3 to this. So if that is the case, and you are listening and watching this, and you do prefer one of these games, do let us know in the comments, because, you know, there are different reasons for different people. Probably like 3. I don't really like 3 that much, but yeah, that's going to do it for us today then, guys. Thank you very much for listening, as always, and watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit like, and if you want to see more Retro Reminisces, which hopefully we're back on track to doing a load now, hit subscribe, because we want to bring you lots more. Facebook and Twitter links in the description down below. And until next time, it is goodbye from me, and it is goodbye from these two.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.